Hey guys, it's Bex. Welcome to another video. We're going to be reading a book in this video that I would say is probably considered one of the most famous books ever and one of the most well-loved books. And it is also considered a modern day classic, and I have never read it. And I figured it was about time to finally read it. And I'm also really excited because I have seen the movies and I love them. So the book that I'm going to be reading in this video is none other than The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Of course, this is the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Actually, I think it is considered one book. I think it says in this book. Yeah, it says right here, The Lord of the Rings is often erroneously called a trilogy when it is in fact a single novel consisting of 6 books plus appendices, sometimes published in 3 volumes. So this book came out in 1954. This is the first part. I'm honestly extremely glad that they made it into 3 parts because this would be the biggest book ever, because this one is almost 400 pages or just over 400 pages. Just over 400 pages. And if you can see this, I have in fact started it already. I just wanted to wait until the weekend to do the intro. I have filmed a little bit of me reading it, barely any, but I am only 86 pages in. I'm on chapter 4, and the first probably 15 pages is the prologue, and I'm gonna be so straightforward. I skimmed the prologue because, first of all, I have seen the movies so many times, so I know a lot about the history of kind of the world. Not saying I know everything in the prologue, because I definitely did not, but it basically just talks about the different kind of hobbits and what hobbits are and what the Shire is and stuff like that. And it's so info dumpy that I read the first 4 pages and then I'm like, okay, that's good enough. So the book really starts at page 20. So I've really only read 60 pages, so not too far in, but I'm not even gonna explain what this book is about because most of you probably already know, even if you haven't read it, because again, the movies are extremely popular and famous. For a while, I was wanting to wait to read this book until I finished The Hobbit, because I have been reading The Hobbit with my fiance for a long time now, and we are about halfway through. Yay. And the only reason we've been reading it very slowly is because we read it out loud to each other just a couple of pages before bed, not every night at all. Sometimes we go a month without reading it, so that's why. But we're getting there and I love it. Honestly, it's so funny, and I'm really hoping Lord of the Rings is funny too. It is a little bit already, but not as much. I think The Hobbit in general is just a lighter book, more lighthearted. Tolkien's writing is really interesting. I actually made a note in my phone, but I'm just remembering it right now because I wanted to tell you guys that one thing I've noticed about his writing is his way of explaining things to the reader, at least so far, is through dialogue. So Gandalf, if you know the story, you know Gandalf, he's a wizard, and he's kind of like Frodo and the other hobbits' mentor throughout their journey. At the beginning, he's explaining to Frodo about the ring, and it's pages of dialogue, literally basically of just Gandalf talking to Frodo. Therefore, we are also, the reader, getting to know what happened with the ring, all the background stuff about Smeagol and all that. So I found that interesting. I feel like it feels maybe a little bit less info dumpy that way, because throughout it's a little bit of Frodo talking, and asking questions. And I also, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I have 2 cats and their names are Frodo and Sam. Sammy we call her because she's a girl, but we named them after obviously Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings. So that is how much me and my fiance love this story. So I'm, like I said, just really excited to read it. And his writing is very detailed and and maybe a little bit too much for some people's liking, but honestly it's a pretty easy read so far. I was kind of nervous that it wasn't going to be for some reason, and there's definitely some words that I'm like, I have no idea what that means, or the spelling of some words is weird, or just the way they talk is a little bit strange. But yeah, so far really liking it, and I'm excited to keep reading. Okay guys, I have kind of my first update since I started this video on the Fellowship of the Ring. I took the dust jacket off and I am making progress. I am on page 176, chapter 11, on book 1 of this book. There's like 2 books in this book, and then this book is really the first part of the Lord of the Rings book. So I'm still on part 1, but I think there's 12 chapters in book 1, so I'm on 11. And the chapters are pretty long. I would say 15 to 25 pages on average. So yeah, I'm getting there. There's about 400 pages in this book, so I'm almost halfway. It's honestly been taking me a little bit longer to read this book. One, because I'm not trying to read it really fast. I'm trying to really savor it and digest what I'm reading. Not that it's really hard to understand what you're reading. I do just think, though, that the way that Tolkien writes and the words he uses, stuff like that, makes it a little bit harder of a read, to where sometimes you read a sentence and you're like, that was really weird wording. What were they trying to say? But other than that, it's a pretty easy read. But like I said, I'm just trying to take my time. I even read one chapter twice. So chapter like 9 or something like that is called In the House of Tom Bombadil. And by the way, I don't think I said this in my first clip, this is gonna have spoilers in this video, so sorry, but I think everyone at least has watched the movies that is interested in the Lord of the Rings. And I mean, there's still spoilers in the book versus the movie, because there's some things in the book that aren't in the movies, I guess. But anyway, this is going to be a spoiler video. So, In the House of Tom Bombadil, if you've read this book, you know that Tom Bombadil is a character that is not in the movies. And I have known that Tom Bombadil was a character in the book for, I would say, a couple years. My fiance has read it and he told me. And also, this is how much of a Lord of the Rings fan I am. There was this podcast, I say was because I think they stopped it, called The Friendship Onion, and it was hosted by, why can't I remember their names in real life right now, but Merry and Pippin. They're best friends in real life, and they did a podcast together called The Friendship Onion, and they had a lot of topics they discuss on that podcast, but one of them is the Lord of the Rings. They do talk about the Lord of the Rings a good amount. Super good podcast if you are curious. They're so funny. But so there was a couple mentions of Tom Bombadil on the podcast, and so I've just known that he was a character in the books but not the movies for a while. So it wasn't really a surprise, to see him pop up in the book. But if you've never read the book and didn't know, you were gonna be like, what the heck? Why isn't this character in the movies? And granted, he is only in a little part of the book. He has like 1 chapter, I would say maybe 1.5 chapters total. But he's a very interesting character. So in his chapter, In the House of Tom Bombadil, he basically asks Frodo for the ring, to see the ring. Frodo, for some reason, gives it to him, which is kind of weird because if you know, the ring is very you just feel very possessive over it. But he gives it to Tom, and Tom puts it on, and first of all, he does not go invisible, which is super strange. And then he gives the ring back over to Frodo, like, no problem, which is, again, weird because people feel very possessive over the ring, and if anyone holds it or anything, they're very, like, reluctant to give it back or give it away. So that was really weird. And then another thing is that then Frodo puts the ring on just to make sure that Tom isn't, like, pulling a fast one on him and it is his ring. And he puts it on and he's happy to find that it is his ring because Mary or someone looks at him and he's like, where'd Frodo go? Because he's invisible. But then Tom, like, follows Frodo where he's walking invisible and is like, come on, Frodo, come back to the table. So he, like, sees Frodo, even with the ring on or something. It doesn't really explain if he sees him or if he can just sense where he is or what, but I just found that super interesting. And Tom is just a very interesting character. He's said to be very old, and he is kind of like the master of the earth, the water, the wind, blah, blah, blah. And he gets introduced because some of the hobbits are basically trapped in trees, which is kind of a play on the scene in, is it the Two Towers? I think so. Where Merry and Pippin had just escaped the orcs and they're in the forest and the trees are alive and the tree trunk kind of like traps them, you know, if you remember that scene. So I just love that the book and the movie, they're different, but they've incorporated a lot from the book into the movie, even if it's like in a different way or in a different scene or stuff like that. I've just noticed that multiple times now, which I love. So what was I getting at? So Tom comes to rescue them from the trees and he like sings to the trees and they listen to him basically to release Merry and Pippin. So yeah, he's like very powerful in a sense and just very old and wise and lives in this forest alone, well, with his wife or something. What's her name? Mrs. Goldberry? Lady Goldberry? So yeah, big part of the book in the sense that you're like, whoa, who is this Tom Bombadil? So I read that and now we are to the part where they have met Aragorn, Strider, and they are about to leave the Prancing Pony. The chapter is called A Knife in the Dark. I don't know if I already said that. And again, if you've seen the movie or know the book, then you know what's gonna happen with Frodo. Pretty obvious by that chapter title. So yeah, I'm gonna really try to get to at least book 2 today in this book, which is page like 2. I think this first book ends, let's see, on page 215. Oh, I don't know if I can do that, honestly. It's kind of a lot to read in one day for this book, because I'm on page 176. But I didn't work today, it's Thursday, and then I work tomorrow, but then I have Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, so I'm really hoping to get a good chunk of the way through by this next coming week, and I'll probably honestly be finishing it next weekend. I just have a feeling. So that's the update. I'm really liking it. I didn't really say that, but it's just very interesting to read for the first time after you've seen the movies, and you just learn a lot more, and it's obviously way more detailed. For example, like, we're only halfway through this book, not even, and they barely met Aragorn, whereas in the Fellowship of the Ring movie, I feel like that's probably, you know, within the first fourth of the movie, third, at least third, but definitely more detailed, and yeah, really like it, and I'm excited to keep reading. Update on the Fellowship of the Ring. A couple things first though. I do not have a microphone on right now because I got a new phone. I guess this is kind of both updates at once. First, I got a new phone, yay. So hopefully the camera will be a lot better, and I also won't be running out of storage all the time. Super excited about that, but it is an upgrade to my old phone, and therefore the little adapter I have for my microphone doesn't fit. But anyway, hopefully my sound is still fine. On to my update on the Fellowship of the Ring. I am on page 317, chapter 4 of book 2, A Journey in the Dark. I literally have like not even 2 pages left of this chapter. Anyway, so we're getting close to being done. I'm almost halfway through the second part, so I would say we're about almost 80% of the way through. So, a couple things that I wanted to say. In chapter 1 of book 2, which is called Many Meetings, that chapter is kind of right when they all get to Rivendell and Frodo had just gotten stabbed by the ring wraiths. And we're kind of meeting, you know, everyone that's going to be in the fellowship and some dwarves and elves. And we meet and get some input on some people from The Hobbit, which I found really interesting because it doesn't delve into that at all in the movies. And I do think that it makes it just so much more fun and interesting to have, I guess in my case, seen The Hobbit. I am reading it right now, like I said, but I'm not done. So I guess even just seeing the movie before you read this is interesting because you meet Gloin, and you kind of know in the Lord of the Rings movie that Gloin is Gimli's father, but Gloin of course is in The Hobbit. And then you also just get information on some of the characters that you meet in The Hobbit, like I really cannot remember his name right now, but the guy, fisherman guy, Bard, is that his name? I think. The fisherman guy in Dale in The Hobbit, you learn that his son, I think it was, is like king or whatever of Dale, and you learn that Dane, Thorin's cousin, is still king under the mountain, and all that. So it was just very fun to read that part, and I think if you haven't seen or read The Hobbit, you'd kind of just be like, oh, it's just more information that is cool but doesn't really mean anything to me. But for me, I really enjoyed that. So I'm still really liking the book. Probably more as I go on, to be honest, and I'm really excited for the next chapter, which is called The Bridge of Khazad-dûm. Is that how you say it? And that part is just really crazy and stuff in the movie, so I'm excited to read that. I honestly have a feeling that after I finish this book, I'm gonna want to read the next one, which is awesome, but I also have so many other books I need to read and want to read, and I've been reading this book for, honestly, I think it's been like exactly 3 weeks. So definitely longer than usual, but again, that's okay. I'm trying to take my time. So yep, that's the update. Still really liking it, and this will probably be my last update until I'm done because I have about 80 pages left, and I will see you guys then. So the elves just gave the company the lambas bread, and it's actually Gimli who like eats it right there, and the Merry and Pippin thing doesn't happen at all, which is, I'm not really surprised, but I love that scene in the movie where Merry and Pippin look at each other. Merry asks, how many did you eat? And Pippin says 4, and then they like burp. That does not happen in the book, but they do talk about how just a little bit of the cake or bread is enough for a long day's march. And it is more strengthening than any food made by men. Sam is so excited to get rope because in the book he's said twice now, I think. Oh, I forgot rope. I knew we would need rope. Like, I wish we had rope. And so they give him coils of rope, and he says, the elf says, never travel far without a rope, and one that is long and strong and light. Such are these. They may be a help in many needs. You don't need to tell me that, said Sam. I came without any, and I've been worried ever since. But I was wondering what these were made of, knowing a bit about rope making. It's in the family, as you might say. And the elf's like, we don't have time now to instruct you in the art of their making. I feel like Boromir's really aggressive in the book.
Yeah, I think Boromir's kind of different in the books.
No. As you guys just saw, I finished The Fellowship of the Ring. Finally, but also I'm kind of sad. Like, I kind of want to just read the next book right now, which obviously I could, but you know, I have other books I want to read that I've been waiting to read because I've been reading this book for like almost 2.5 weeks, I think. And the other ones are probably gonna take me just as long. So we're gonna take a little break. So I wrote down actually like almost 2 full pages of notes on this book. So I'm gonna try and be fast with this outro and review and just overall experience reading this book. But it'll probably be kind of long. First, I think I should say my thoughts on this book and my rating, I guess, which I don't even know. Oh gosh, so I think a rating for this book, I like want to give it 5 stars. But then again, am I just gonna give it 5 stars because it's The Lord of the Rings? I don't know. So I'm between a 4.5 and a 5. The only reason I wouldn't give it a 5 is because it's just a little bit slower paced, kind of harder to read, and it's just slower paced, I think, is the main reason. But the story, amazing, incredible. The writing, even though it is slow and very detailed, it's also very beautiful, and just what Tolkien was able to do and the story that he made up and the world, and like he literally made up languages for this book, multiple for this story, I should say. Just the lore of the Lord of the Rings is just crazy, and I don't even know the half of it. He's just a genius. I just think Tolkien's writing and storytelling is just on another level. He's so talented and really truly kind of one of the best high fantasy writers, storytellers that have ever been. And I think because his writing is so good and the story is so crazy and amazing, that kind of helps out with the slower parts of this book and the fact that there's a lot of info dumping, because obviously there is, because there's a lot of just world building. Like, it's literally this whole world that isn't real, you know, that he made up, all these different kind of creatures and species, you know, orcs, goblins, men, elves, dwarves, hobbits. Like, it makes the info dumping portions of the book, I think, easier to read and still entertaining and interesting because it's just so amazing. One thing I found really fun was the amount of things that they put in the movies from the book, or I should say the movie, direct quotes that are used, you know, fly you fools, and I feel like butter that's scraped over too much bread, or whatever that quote is. Those are just some that pop into my head that are classic quotes from the story, and they were put into the movie. So I just found that really fun, and I think you'd also find that really fun to watch the movies if you read the books first and see that they kept a lot of the quotes. It helps you just picture the scene in the book, and I think that goes for just watching the movies first in general, because they kept certain things pretty similar. You can really picture the story kind of unfolding when you read the book. For some differences in the books, movies, there are quite a few. A couple came to mind while I was writing my notes. First of all, hi Sammy, you're always joining me in these videos. Yeah. Okay, we don't need to see your butt. No. One is the time frame. This is probably the biggest difference, is that in the movie, you know, it starts out at Bilbo's 111th birthday, I believe, and the same night after the party, Gandalf comes and sees Frodo and gives him the ring. Bilbo leaves, and Frodo embarks on his adventure with Sam. And in the book, it's totally different. Frodo gets the ring, and then kind of nothing happens for, I could be wrong, I think it's like 17 years or something like that. So just a long time has passed, which was a huge difference. And then another one is Arwen. This is random, but Arwen is literally, I think, mentioned one time in this book when they're in Rivendell, and when she is mentioned, it gives no indication that her and Aragorn are like in love or in a romantic relationship or anything like that. So they obviously played that up a lot in the movies as like a little romance side plot, you know, which who doesn't love a little romance? So not complaining there, but that was quite a bit different. I already talked about Tom Bombadil. That's a difference in the book and movie. He's not in the movie at all. And then Boromir's character, so in the book he was only meant to even be involved in the Fellowship because, I mean, I think this was at least part of the reason that he was chosen, was because he was needing to kind of go the way that they were going anyway to get back to Minas Tirith and stuff. So that's kind of why he was chosen. And in the movie, it's nothing like that is mentioned. You just know that he's one of the companions of the Fellowship, and I can't help but like his character in the movie because I think I just love Sean Bean, the actor. I just think he's such a good actor, and he plays the part so well. And obviously where he leaves the story is, I just love. It's also very sad, but I love it. And in the book, he's definitely, I think, even less likable than the movie, especially at the end. That's kind of the last part of the book when the Fellowship breaks, and when he is talking to Frodo in the woods and he's like, just give me the ring, you know, you're just like, dude, you're like bullying a little hobbit, but still can't help but like him. So that was interesting about Boromir. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So good. Do I recommend this book? Of course. Yes, 100%. However, I think that you should definitely start with The Hobbit. And I'm saying that as someone who hasn't finished The Hobbit. I'm reading it, like I said multiple times in this video. I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but I'm about halfway through. But I think that was enough to kind of introduce me to his writing. That book and this book are honestly a lot different though. The Hobbit is very, this isn't a review on The Hobbit of course, but The Hobbit's a lot more lighthearted, and it's literally like kind of, you could like read it to your kid, or your kid could read it. I mean, a kid could read this too. Honestly, there's nothing in it that is like adult, except that it's just would be a little hard to understand, but it's just darker and there isn't as much like joy and happiness in the story as The Hobbit. I found The Hobbit, or I am finding The Hobbit, really funny. This had a couple of times that had me laughing for sure and smiling, but not as much at all. And if you read The Hobbit and you like it, I definitely think go into this story. But if you didn't really like The Hobbit, I think that, you know, you probably won't like it. So that's kind of what I think about that. I think that's kind of all my thoughts and things I had to say about this book and experience reading this book. I'm really glad I finally read it, and I'm extra excited to finish The Hobbit now. I think I want to finish The Hobbit before jumping into the next book, The Two Towers, and go from there. So not sure when reading The Two Towers will be, but I might make a video of that as well, and just the rest of the series. Not sure yet, but if you guys want to see that, let me know. Frodo, hi. Frodo and Sam, my little hobbits. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and seeing my kind of reactions and thoughts on the Fellowship of the Ring, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!